Hello wrestling fans, I am the ProWrestleMachine. And this is July 15, 1996 Wrestling Observer Newsletter. Bash at the Beach 1996 Recap. UFC loses big court battle. Warrior suspended from WWF. Tons more by Observer staff. Wrestling Observer Newsletter. P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 95009-1228. July 15, 1996. After a 15-year babyface run that started by accident, Hulk Hogan turned heel amidst incredible heat in an angle that will be remembered for years as the climax of WCW's Bash at the Beach pay-per-view show on July 7 in Daytona Beach. Hogan turned out to be the mysterious third man on the Outsiders team with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, but didn't appear until 16 minutes into the main event, which had turned into a tag match with Nash and Hall versus Sting and Randy Savage, after Lex Luger had been stretchered out in the early moments. Hogan came out to a babyface pop after Nash had delivered a low blow on Savage. After Hogan teased going after Nash and Hall, and they bailed out of the ring, he then leg dropped Savage twice, threw the referee out of the ring, leg dropped Savage a third time and covered Savage while Hall counted the pin. The heat, with a literal flood of debris being thrown at the ring, was as intense as anything seen in U.S. rings at a major arena since Jake Roberts and Love Machine were headlining Los Angeles for AAA. After the match, Hogan gave one of his best interviews in years, basically talking about building a giant organization up north, the World Wrestling Federation, and making the owners of that company millions of dollars, then coming to work for billionaire Ted, who offered him millions. Hogan portrayed it as if Hogan had proved he was bigger than pro wrestling, and that the WCW fans were Johnny-come-latelys who wouldn't even be attending matches for the group if Hogan hadn't have joined, and basically called the fans garbage and told them to stick it because of the way they had reacted to him the past few months after he had done all kinds of charity work. The half-shoot, half-work interview was strong and focused enough that it incited enough heat that some fans in the building were ripping up and throwing down their Hogan merchandise, and a few people were even crying. Still, according to live reports, approximately 25% of the fans were still cheering Hogan, Nash and Hall, the latter two of whom were reduced to background performers as Hogan held the spotlight at the finish. Nash and Hall had received a predominantly babyface reaction when the match began. What appears is that WCW will be built around a work promotion versus promotion feud for the foreseeable future, very similar to the angle that made New Japan millions in 1995-96. The Outsider group will be called the New World Order of Wrestling, with Hogan, Hall, and Nash. No doubt Jeff Jarrett and Ted DiBiase will join the group in the fall when their Titan contracts expire. The Nasty Boys teased on Nitro joining the group, and no doubt a few others from WCW will jump as well, along with WCW making significant plays for any mainline Titan talent whose contract comes due, such as Davey Boy Smith. The Hogan turn totally overshadowed the best match on a WCW pay-per-view show in several years, the Rey Mysterio Jr. vs. Psicosis opener, which was described by one reader as the first great match of the 21st century. The two combined pulling out their expected daredevil and intricate precision high spots with strong mat wrestling and more selling and psychology than they would do in Mexico, Japan, or ECW. I'd rate this match behind only the Mysterio Jr. vs. Juventud Guerrera match in Philadelphia as the best match in the US of 1996. In between the pay-per-view opener and the angle was a basically average pay-per-view show, highlighted more by the strongest performance in the career of Tony Schiavone as play-by-play announcer. Schiavone focused the entire show on the main angle and the identity of the third man, to the point that the show was largely well received despite the mediocre nature of much of the show, because the key angle paid off in a big way. The angle was in some ways reminiscent of an Ole Anderson turn in Atlanta on Dusty Rhodes in a cage match that is still considered one of the prototype heel turns that has been copied numerous times, most successfully before the 1985 Starrcade involving Rhodes and Ric Flair, both in terms of the shock value of the turn and the strong post-turn heel interview. Schiavone ended the pay-per-view show with the line, "Hulk Hogan, you can go to hell." Hogan had agreed to do the heel turn about 11 days before the show, largely because there was no place left in WCW for him had he not chosen to do so. Hogan's contract with WCW was scheduled to expire after two more pay-per-view shows, the Hog Wild show in Sturgis, South Dakota next month and Halloween Havoc in Las Vegas, where, by virtue of a sponsorship deal with Slim Jims, they had long promised a Hogan vs. Randy Savage main event. Since WCW largely focuses its company around Monday night television ratings and pay-per-view buy rates, Hogan's huge contract became expendable. Since Hogan doesn't work arena dates, his staying or going isn't a factor on them. In Hogan's usual great knack of timing, He left WCW to do a movie with Roddy Piper and Gary Busey just before the NBA playoffs changed the Monday Nitro time slot and wreaked havoc on the ratings, which appeared to be a great leverage move. However, in the expansion to 2 hours, the show's ratings have increased to their consistently highest level to date, with Hogan not on any of the shows. This week in his leverage position is compared with Bischoff's in negotiations to stay at his incredible money deal. While Hogan has continued to draw much stronger buy rates than WCW has averaged without him, although the gap between those sets of numbers has declined as time has gone on, the belief is the new program with Nash and Hall was hot enough and would draw basically as well with or without Hogan. Thus Hogan's huge cut of the pay-per-view revenue would no longer be worth it. But in the end, Hogan proved to be the ultimate fox once again, in that this angle on the surface appears to be the hottest angle in the history of WCW, and Hogan, who a few weeks ago looked like the real outsider, maneuvered himself back into being the centerpiece. Even though many would argue the Hogan turn was long overdue based on fan reaction to him, particularly in the Carolinas and in the major cities where fans are more oriented toward cheering for their favorites, Ric Flair, than being the programmed response robots wrestling fans have long been taken for granted as being by those who run the business. However, it didn't come without major risks. Hogan's name was still a factor in buy rates, largely believed to be coming from young children who wouldn't be as apt to beg parents to buy the shows to see a heel Hogan. Whatever revenue WCW merchandise brings in was put at major risk as well, as Hogan was the top item seller, and clearly those numbers should drop substantially. For older and longtime fans, seeing the biggest name in American wrestling do his first turn on a national scale is going to spark interest in a big way, particularly short term. WCW officials knew that the Hogan turn had to be done right or it wouldn't be worth the risks, and it could only be done once, and long-term plans had to be finalized. There was legit fear basically up until the last day that Hogan would change his mind at the last minute, as he's done in the past when it comes to major angles that would leave him laying or doing jobs that would elevate others to a parity position. A Plan B contingency idea was that Sting would do a heel turn and join the Outsiders, largely due to the belief that too many people had speculated about Luger turning, which was the original plan, or Savage turning, but nobody had speculated on Sting turning, and the company wanted a shocking finish to the show. Hogan's agreement, after a meeting on or around June 26 between Bischoff and Hogan in Los Angeles, where Hogan is doing a movie called The Overlords, was still being worked on as late as the afternoon of the show. It was at about that time when Bischoff reportedly told Hall and Nash not to worry about the third man, as the three had up to that point had many discussions and brought up several names. Because Bischoff didn't arrive at the building until moments before the start of the live main event show because of last-minute working out of details with Hogan, WCW created yet another last-minute angle claiming Bischoff wasn't even there, he was, and that he might have been kidnapped, an angle that had no conclusion on the pay-per-view show because it wasn't planned in advance. The angle was pretty much blown off on television the next day when Bischoff said he was simply at some high-level meetings at the last minute. WCW had attempted to keep the identity of the third man a secret, and largely succeeded, to the point where speculation had taken up a life of its own, with every WWF wrestler missing a show and his family members, whether under contract or not, becoming fodder for the rumor mill. Within the company, only a few knew it was Hogan, although by the middle of the past week many who didn't know for sure were strongly expecting Hogan was the one, and there were those who did know. Hall was telling people that he didn't know until 2 hours before match time, although that's somewhat hard to believe. In the commentary on the pay-per-view show, Hall and Nash were most of the time clumsily referred to as simply the Outsiders. There were references to them as Hall and Nash with no first names, a few times but not many times during the match, which made the announcing awkward in the main event. After working for smaller promotions through 1979, Kerry Bollia made his first national mark and was given the name Hulk Hogan by Vince McMahon Sr. when coming to the World Wrestling Federation as a heel managed by Fred Blassie. He mainly feuded with Andre the Giant and Tony Atlas in a run that lasted through 1981, which was more noteworthy in that during the same time period, he toured and made a huge hit with New Japan Pro Wrestling as a regular tag team partner of Stan Hansen, who at the time was the most popular foreigner in Japan. With less in the way of babyface/heel delineation in Japan, Hogan was heavily cheered, although still worked what would be called a heel style. After leaving the WWF for the AWA, Verne Gagne had him programmed as the same arrogant heel that he played in WWF, with Johnny Valiant as his manager and mouthpiece, since Gagne had believed Hogan looked impressive standing there but couldn't talk. It was on August 9, 1981, that Hulkamania was born in the St. Paul Civic Center when he debuted wrestling three jobbers in a handicap match, and to the shock of Gagne, received thunderous cheers. Taking note of fan reaction, it wasn't long before Valiant was quickly ditched and Hogan, who got a big career break the next year with a role in the movie Rocky III, was the top babyface in the company and the top box office drawing card in the country. He led the AWA to record business in 1982 and 1983 while continuing to tour for New Japan, and after the Hansen jump to All Japan in late 1981, became, along with Andre, New Japan's top foreign star. He jumped to McMahon Jr.'s WWF, and the rest, both good, bad and ugly, was the focal point of much of pro wrestling both in and out of the ring since that point. In those days, many credited the Rocky movie with Hogan's success in wrestling, but that would be wrong since Hogan was already proving to be a huge draw in the AWA before the movie was ever released. Bash at the Beach drew a sellout of 8,300 fans to the Daytona Beach Ocean Center, which sold out 2.5 hours early and turned 2,000 away. The paid attendance was approximately 6,400, paying $72,000. A totally dark match. Jim Powers, James Manley, pinned Hugh Morris, Bill DeMott. B. In the first match on the live main event show, Rick and Scott Steiner, Robert and Scott Reach Steiner, beat Harlem Heat, Lane and Booker Huffman, via DQ, so Heat retained the WCW tag titles in 501. Match was okay, but rushed. After Rick used a bulldog off the top rope on Stevie Ray, Colonel Parker went to interfere. This time Rick blocked him and got his cane. At this point Sister Sherry returned and jumped on Rick for the title-saving DQ. Sherry and Parker teased that they would go at it, when Sherry grabbed Parker in a lip lock, so they are going back to part 2 of the storyline abruptly dropped earlier this year when Sherry was fired. 1 star. See Bobby Walker pinned Billy Kidman, Pete Gruner, in 2 minutes with a spear headbutt off the top rope. Walker nearly fell off the top rope again. Both guys worked very hard and did nice high spots while they were in there. 1 star. B. Rock and Roll Express, Rick Morton and Reuben Kane, beat Fire and Ice, Scott Norton and Harold Hogue, in 208. Ricky basically got destroyed by both. Ice Train had him beat, but Norton told Train he wanted to tag in. Norton tagged in and put Morton over his shoulder in a backbreaker, but it wound up with Morton's feet knocking down Train. In the ensuing confusion, Morton pinned Norton with a backslide. Norton and Train argued after and did an interview once again teasing the split. This was all a lot worse than it sounds. Dud. Eddie Guerrero pinned Steve Regal, Darren Matthews, with a schoolboy in 338. Very disappointing considering the caliber of who was involved. 1/2 of 1 star. 1. Rey Mysterio Jr., Oscar Gonzalez, pinned Psicosis, Dionisio Castellanos, in 1518. They started with some great mat wrestling. Psicosis did an awesome over-the-top tope, and partially crashed his head into the post. He came back in and used a guillotine leg drop off the top. Mysterio Jr. used a spinning Frankensteiner off the apron to the floor. He's done this move a zillion times and his head always comes inches from the floor and never hits, but this time he cracked his head on the floor. What was amazing about this match is that both were banged up doing their moves, yet continued doing outrageous spots and hit every spot 100%, and even though you saw them crash, their work showed no indication that the crashes affected their performance in the slightest. Psicosis did perhaps the greatest hotshot in the history of wrestling. He dropped Mysterio Jr. throat first on the top, and then did a senton from the top rope to the floor, which appeared to shake himself up. Mysterio Jr. used a springboard Hurricane Rana for a near fall, a springboard dropkick from the apron to the ring. He came off the top turnbuckle with another spinning Frankensteiner on Psicosis on the apron. In the ring he used an Arabian moonsault followed by a springboard dropkick to the back which sent Psicosis sliding across the mat to the floor. Mysterio Jr. then did a twisting Osai moonsault and crashed his knee on the guardrail on the flight over. He went for another springboard Hurricane Rana, but Psicosis turned it into a power bomb. Psicosis went for a splash mountain off the top rope, Die Hard in Japan, but on the way down Mysterio Jr. turned it into a Frankensteiner for the fall. 4 3/4 stars. 2. John Tenta pinned Big Bubba Rogers, Ray Traylor, in what was billed as a Carson City Silver Dollar match, which had a sock filled with coins on the top of a high pole. It was apparent Tenta wasn't going to be able to climb the pole. They did enough gimmicks combined with Bubba being a good worker to keep it interesting. At one point Bubba pulled out athletic tape and taped Tenta to the ropes and whipped him with a belt. Heenan said he was hitting him in the gills. Schiavone responded he didn't have gills, and Heenan goes, "I know, he's not a fish." Bubba pulled out scissors and teased cutting more hair. Let's see, he got half the hair on his head, half his beard. I was scared he was going for the pubes next, but Tenta saved the day with the one of 225 low blows on the show. Tenta got the scissors and cut the tape off, getting himself loose, and attempted to cut the straps on the pole. It wound up with Bubba regaining the advantage and telling Jimmy Hart to climb the pole. 55-year-old Jimmy climbed up, and while this was going on, Tenta power-slammed Bubba. As Hart came down, Tenta was waiting, got the sock, hit Bubba, and scored the pin in 9 minutes. 1 1/4 stars. 3. Diamond Dallas Page Falkenberg, pinned Jim Duggan in a taped fist match to retain the ring in 5:39. Page taped Duggan's boots together, trapping him around the post. He pulled out scissors. That was 2 straight matches with scissors and tape, and cut the tape off Duggan's fists. Page basically did his Terry Funk routine, this time bouncing up and down in the ropes, and looked better than usual in doing so. Although Duggan is just about the worst wrestler in the business and Page is overrated in some circles and underrated in others, this match in the ring was much better than it would be imagined due to Page, who won with a diamond cutter. After the match, Duggan taped his fist and KO'd Page. 1 3/4 stars. 4. In a double dog collar match, Nasty Boys, Brian Yandrosovitz and Jerry Saganich, beat Public Enemy, Ted Petty and Mike Durham, in 11:25. Their typical match with lots of foreign objects used, lots of stiff shots and almost no selling. It was your basic bad ECW brawl match sans juice. Sags in particular was atrocious when it came to selling. This match ranged from being a great brawl in certain spots to a total cluster toward the end. There were hard shots with garbage cans and lids, chair shots, surfboard shots, etc. Rocco came off a lifeguard stand in the back and wound up hitting a chair when Sags yanked his chain for real. He went up a second time and Sags knocked down the entire lifeguard stand. They used tables. At one point Sags piledrove Rocco on the floor. Rocco put Sags through a table. Knobs did some more garbage can shots on Grunge. The match was too long for this style since there is no story or building involved, so you can't be out there for a long time unless it's ECW. And these guys really got sloppy at the end. It got worse as they got one of those industrial strength tables that kept not breaking. By the end the guys were tripping over each other's chains. Finally Rocco was clotheslined with a chain and Sags pinned him. Public Enemy beat up Nasty Boys after the match. 1 1/4 stars. 5. Dean Malenko, Dean Simon, beat Disco Inferno, Glenn Gilberti, in 12:04 with the Texas Cloverleaf to keep the WCW Cruiserweight title. Shockingly, this was the second best match on the show. Malenko was awesome in carrying Disco, who actually looked like a promising good wrestler in there. The storyline was that Disco was actually dropping his flighty mannerisms and came close to winning on numerous occasions. The match did a good job of getting Disco over as a serious wrestler when he's focused rather than just a dancing clown, even though he lost at the end. He made a strong comeback and even got numerous near falls after Malenko destroyed him for the first 5:30. At one point Malenko did a springboard dropkick, and when he went for the cloverleaf, Disco used an inside cradle. Finally Malenko used a tiger driver and the cloverleaf. It was a good Japanese-style match. 3 1/4 stars. 6. Steve McMichael pinned Joe Gomez with a tombstone piledriver in 6:44. McMichael has the attitude and his wife has the look. But it was painful putting two guys who are both so green out there on a pay-per-view and having them go this long, and it exposed him big time. Just terrible. -1/2 star. 7. Ric Flair, Richard Fliehr, pinned Conan Charles Ashenoff to win the U.S. title in 15:39. It was a basic Flair match with all the regular spots. At one point Conan came off the apron with a body block on Flair and nearly wiped out Liz in the process. When Conan was on the top rope, Woman shook the rope and he crotched himself, low blow number 171. Woman later gave Conan a tremendous low blow which was so good it should have been the finish. Instead, Conan recovered from that and they traded figure fours, and Conan got a few near falls. Finally Liz distracted the ref and Woman gave Conan a horrible looking shot with a high heel shoe and Conan sold it as if he were shot, and Flair pinned him with his feet on the ropes. The match was good until the finish, which looked really bad. Considering the style clash, both did well, though that probably isn't surprising because Flair has carried a whole lot worse in his career. For the record, this was Flair's 6th reign as U.S. champion, the last time being when he lost the title on January 27, 1981 to Roddy Piper. 2.5 stars. 8. The Giant Paul White and Kevin Sullivan beat Arnold Anderson, Marty Lunda, and Chris Benoit in 7:59 when Giant choke slammed Anderson. Michael hit Giant with a briefcase early and he chased after him. This left Anderson and Benoit to beat on Sullivan and try to establish him as the face in this match. Sullivan, even though he was being double-teamed, didn't sell much. His comeback came when he gave Anderson the sloppiest monkey flip in the history of pay-per-view, onto Benoit. Giant made the tag, Benoit and Sullivan brawled to back, and Giant immediately choke-slammed Anderson for the pin. After the match, Benoit used a crossbody off the television platform onto Sullivan and both landed in the beach area set. They brawled back to the ring where Benoit gave Sullivan a backward superplex off the top rope and kept stomping on him until Woman ran in and screamed for Benoit to stop hurting Kevin. No acknowledgement was made about them being married, nor were any hints dropped. Giant carried Sullivan out on his shoulders. 2 stars. 9. Sting and Randy Savage, Randy Poffo, and Lex Luger, Larry Fole, went to a no decision against Nash and Hall. Luger was KO'd early when Sting used a Stinger splash on Nash, which in storyline was said to have hit Luger, although it didn't. Luger's has been destroyed a million times worse in the past and not even sold it, but this time he did a stretcher job and the match was halted for a few minutes. Match was so-so, totally saved by the finish, mainly with the outsiders beating on Sting. Savage made the hot tag until Nash low-blowed him. Hogan came out and the rest was history. During the post-match, a fat fan hit the ring. This was definitely no plant, and Nash knocked him down with one punch, and he and Hall really put the boots to him right on live television before security hauled him out. 3 stars. After controversies with local government officials in every city, they've attempted to run shows, and including some shows that were in question up until the day before or even hours before the show. The Ultimate Fighting Championship suffered a clear loss this past week when it lost a court fight in Providence, Rhode Island, and was forced to move its July 12th pay-per-view event to the State Fairgrounds Arena in Birmingham, Alabama. The state of Rhode Island got a court injunction last week preventing the show from taking place. Promoter Semaphore Entertainment Group went to Superior Court Judge Richard Israel, who had ruled previously that UFC would have to abide by the guidelines of pro wrestling and get a license from the Department of Business Regulations, DBR, to run its show, to overturn the injunction. Israel refused to reject the injunction, saying that his hands were tied because all appeals weren't exhausted prior to the case going back to him, and he couldn't rule until the case was heard before an appeals board, which had pretty well tied the case up. Semaphore Entertainment Group President Bob Marowitz and the DBR had been negotiating for about 3 weeks, since the period when ticket sales to the event were put on hold pending the license being approved. UFC promoter David Isaacs had felt confident Marowitz and the DBR had come to an understanding when Marowitz agreed to ban elbow and knee blows. However, the DBR then called into question the octagon cage, causing a big brouhaha since Rhode Island had allowed the WWF to hold cage matches and the guidelines, as ruled by the judge, were to be the same as pro wrestling. So the DBR then agreed to allow the matches in a cage provided they were held within a wrestling ring. At this point, Semaphore Entertainment Group had to punt, because the octagon cage is the basic trademark of the UFC, and officials were frustrated because they feel the octagon, because one can't fall out of the ring as in a boxing ring, makes the event safer, and the governmental officials attempting to change rules are theoretically doing so for safety reasons. DBR officials were also attempting to get Marowitz to ban striking altogether. Others in Rhode Island, after Marowitz had agreed to ban the knees and elbows, suggested that given his track record from Detroit, where he agreed in court to ban headbutting and closed fist punching as a court-negotiated settlement to holding the show, and then the rules were never acknowledged at the show nor really enforced closely, that the same would occur this time. Most of the governmental holdup of the show was started when Arizona Senator John McCain started the political ball rolling with his local Republican Party contacts. The July 12th show had a $70,000 advance as of 1 month before the show, when sales were frozen, and the Providence Civic Center will be refunding that money. As of July 8th, the new location in Birmingham had sold about 500 tickets in the 5,200-seat arena since the show was officially announced on July 3rd. The show locally will be going head-to-head with a USA Wrestling show at the city's major facility, Boutwell Auditorium, featuring Bob Armstrong and his sons, Tommy Rich and Abdullah the Butcher. There has been one change in the card, as Kevin Jacob, who was scheduled to face Mark Coleman in a first-round match, suffered a broken hand in training and will be replaced by Moti Horenstein, a karate fighter from Spring Valley, New York. The alternate lineup has changed, largely due to attempting to save on travel considerations. Pro wrestler Geza Coleman Jr. is the only alternate from the original quartet, with the 3 newcomers being Sam Adkins, a boxer/wrestler who lost to Don Fry in the semis in San Juan, Felix Lee Mitchell, a kung fu/boxer who lost to Ken Shamrock in the semis in Charlotte, and Diesel Berto, a shoot fighter/pro wrestler, pro wrestling Fujiwara Gumi/ worked for Championship Wrestling from Florida in the mid-80s as Haiti Kid Berto, from Winter Haven, Florida, who lost while fighting on Koji Kiao's Universal Valley Tudo show in Japan in April. There has been a lot of criticism of this tournament because to most UFC fans, it's Fry and a pack of unknowns. Semaphore Entertainment Group has been attempting to fill the field with big strikers and a few quality ground fighters in order to provide fights with striker versus grappler style clashes and avoid what has happened when the ground fighters have dominated the tournament, which has been less exciting although technically superior fighting. Semaphore Entertainment Group did receive a major scheduling break this past week when the Mike Tyson-Bruce Seldon fight was cancelled due to Tyson's illness. The fight, set for July 13th, would have not only been competition on the same weekend, and Tyson is far and away the biggest drawing card of anyone on pay-per-view, but would eat up much of the available commercial time on the Barker channels, which is the UFC's main avenue of advertising. Both UFC and the WWF's international incident should receive a lot more commercial time with Tyson out of the picture. The following event, set for September 20th in Syracuse, New York, is already facing yet another battle when Syracuse Mayor Roy Bernardi announced on July 3rd that they would deny a permit for Semaphore Entertainment Group to hold the event at the On Center. Bernardi said that he was afraid for security reasons that the fighters might get out of the cage and injure spectators by continuing to fight either in the stands or on the street. Isaacs, however, said Syracuse was still the planned site for the September event, saying he heard about the Wire's service story but said that Marowitz had talked with the Bernardi who had said he would work with Semaphore Entertainment Group on the event. Jim Hellwig was officially suspended by the World Wrestling Federation on July 8 due to missing shows the previous weekend in Indianapolis, Detroit, and Pittsburgh. The suspension, which was announced later that evening on the Raw show, was effective immediately. Psycho Sid Audi will take all of Hellwig's announced bookings starting on July 11th in Albany, New York and continuing through the July 21st International Incident pay-per-view show from Vancouver, BC. Sid was flown into Stamford, Connecticut on July 8th, while Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, and Jim Cornette, who worked Providence the previous night, stayed in town to do a series of vignettes that earlier that day that ran throughout the Raw show hinting of a secret third partner for the main event against Owen Hart and Davey Boy Smith and Vader. They finally announced the partner and had Sid do an interview at the end of the show after teasing it would be one of several others. WWF figurehead President Gorilla Monsoon announced the suspension to the fans, saying that no matter how popular Ultimate Warrior was, no wrestler was above missing his scheduled appearances and letting down the fans. Monsoon stated that Warrior would be welcome back provided he posts an appearance bond, which is in fact basically the truth. There was a lot of negativity among the WWF wrestlers regarding bringing Hellwig back unpunished for missing the shows. Vince McMahon told Hellwig that he would be brought back provided he post a large bond, which he would forfeit to the WWF provided he were to no-show another card. The exact amount Hellwig will be required to post is being negotiated, but it will be in excess of $100,000. Hellwig is said to have neither agreed to the price, nor indicated that he won't meet the price in order to return, although the belief is that he will return. If Hellwig were to agree to post the bond, he would probably be written back into the storylines and return to the WWF for the Monday Night Raw taping on July 22 in Seattle. The original plan, provided Hellwig would miss the pay-per-view, to announce him as injured after the already taped angle involving Hart, Smith, and Vader, was nixed, apparently because too many people were aware of Hellwig's actual situation and they decided against doing the typical pro wrestling angle. At the beginning of Raw, Monsoon announced Hellwig as being suspended, but said that the Warrior vs. Hart match, since it had already been advertised, would take place tonight. Warrior had to be helped out of the ring after a post-match attack by Camp Cornette. However, in weekend television, he will be announced as only having been shaken up and his non-appearances will be announced as being due to the suspension and not due to an injury. The angle where Warrior, Michaels and Johnson make their comeback on Camp Cornette, which was scheduled to air on the July 15th Raw, will be edited off that program. Based on the television commentary during Raw, it appears that McMahon expects Hellwig to post the appearance bond and return. There was tremendous bitterness within the company regarding Hellwig's no-shows. Reportedly, he was in Indianapolis on June 28, had a telephone blow-up with McMahon regarding something he saw at a licensing show a few days earlier. WWF sources claimed that at no point did Hellwig complain about his WrestleMania payoff in the argument, but he blew up because he saw a slogan of "Always Believe" being used as a WWF marketing slogan. He felt that was his personal slogan that he had used for years and that the WWF hadn't paid him for use of the slogan and felt the items with that slogan should have been his items and he should have been informed of them and receive a cut of them. Many in the company, particularly in the marketing department, were upset because Hellwig apparently blew up at people in the department, and also because of how he handled his no-shows. Hellwig claimed on July 1 in an interview with Bob Ryder on Prodigy that he was having no problems with the WWF that caused him to miss the weekend shows and that he couldn't understand why the announcements were made about him in the buildings, saying he missed the shows because of the death of his father. His father in fact passed away on June 30th, but those in WWF claim the timeline doesn't fit since he missed shows on June 28th and June 29th as well as June 30th and that he was in Indianapolis and flew home. There was also bitterness that Hellwig, who is a WWF wrestler, is banned from giving unauthorized interviews, gave an on-the-record interview on Prodigy, a competitor to America Online, which WWF has its contract with. And even more that he mentioned his father's death as the reason for missing the shows on the interview, but never even informed the WWF as to the death of his father, who he had never spoken with since the age of 3, until sending a fax to McMahon several hours later that day. Hellwig wasn't booked on the WWF weekend shows and appeared as scheduled at a comic book convention in San Diego, during which time he held a condo with wrestling fans and didn't bring up the idea that he was expecting to be suspended and talked as if he was expecting to go back on the road with the WWF starting with a show in Albany. It's been a trying week for the Hart family in Calgary due to Matthew, a 13-year-old nephew of Brett and Owen, contracting a very serious virus which left him in critical condition for several days. Matthew is the son of Georgia, the sister of Brett and Owen, and is especially close to Owen as Owen brought him to WrestleMania in Los Angeles and was a big wrestling fan and I believe had done a few pro wrestling style matches with some of his cousins as part of rodeo shows, and they're all surprisingly good considering their age. Owen and Davey Boy Smith both missed their scheduled weekend appearances due to being in Calgary and staying at the hospital. The virus was apparently eating away at internal tissue and Matthew was in and out of consciousness and in the intensive care unit. As of Tuesday morning, his condition had stabilized and apparently he was doing better than could have normally been expected, but it was far too early to determine how much damage had been done in the first 48 hours, which are the most serious. According to one report, his lower body had been ravaged by the infection to where he was discolored from the waist down. Pro wrestlers Dan Severn and Yumiko Hata both came out winners on July 7th in the biggest Valley Tudo-style show as far as major name participants ever in Japan. The Japanese Valley Tudo event, promoted by pro wrestling legend Satoru Sayama, drew a sellout 7,000 fans to Tokyo Bay NK Hall in a show that, because of the bigger name participants, was more looked forward to in the martial arts world than this coming week's UFC tournament. Severn, a late replacement for Don Frye, whose Semaphore Entertainment Group got pulled from the event because it came only 5 days before their pay-per-view where Frye was the biggest star, defeated Doug Murphy, a 225-pounder from Matt Hume's Pancration Gym in Seattle. The rules were modified in this fight in that elbow blows, banned in Japanese Valley Tudo, were legal in this match. Murphy attempted the same guillotine choke that Ken Shamrock beat Severn with last year, but Severn reversed it and landed on top near the ropes. Severn, now 10-2 in this style of fighting, maneuvered Murphy into the center of the ring and grabbed a cross-arm breaker for the submission in 3:23. Hata of All Japan Women, in her fourth Valley Tudo competition, had a tougher time with Margot Niehoft of Amsterdam, the European women's kickboxing champion in the 165-pound weight class and a protege of Gerard Gordeau. Hata, 29, weighed in at 165 pounds as compared to 161 for Niehoft. Because Hata had to respect her foe's striking ability in a match where both wore gloves, it was a lot more cautious match than Hata's previous Valley Tudo rules matches. The two circled similar to the most recent Severn Shamrock match, without even touching for 2:45 of a match with 3 8-minute rounds. At this point Niehoft threw a low kick to Hata's leg. The two danced around again with the only blow actually thrown at about 5 minutes when Niehoft tried another kick to the leg. Near the end of the round Hata tried to shoot in but Niehoft backed away and the round ended with basically no action and the fans chanting for action. In the second round, Niehoft again kicked Hata's leg, and then went in for a tackle and landed on top of Hata throwing punches down. However, from that position, Hata maneuvered out and caught the arm lock and got the submission at 4:14. Hata, now 3-1 in real Valley Tudo matches, has only lost once, that being to 310-pound Svetlana Gundarenko, but has found herself in trouble in both of her 2 previous matches. The top 3 matches on the card involved Royler Gracie, a 30-year-old older brother of Hoist Gracie, along with Extreme Fighting stars Igor Zinoviev and John Lewis. Gracie, who weighed 147 for the fight, was the 1996 champion in the featherweight division at the World Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Championships in Rio de Janeiro. He faced Noboru Asahi, a 143-pounder who is the lightweight champion of Satoru Sayama's shooting promotion with a legit record of 17-1-3, with no losses the past 5 years. Gracie dominated the match, winning in 5:09 with the choke sleeper. Zinoviev scored a technical knockout in 44 seconds over Enson Inoue, who was ranked as the #1 contender in the heavyweight division in shooting. Lewis, in a 154-pound weight division match with elbow blows legal, went to a 3-round, 24-minute draw against Ruben Sato, the #1 contender in the welterweight division in shooting. Rickson Gracie was presented at the show with a championship belt as the first champion of the Vale Tudo promotion. Sayama's Vale Tudo promotion rules include 1. Open finger gloves are optional but not mandatory. 2. Knee pads, shin guards, cups and ankle supports are optional. Mouthpieces are mandatory. 3. No martial arts gis are allowed. 4. Matches can end via knockout, tap out, referee stop, corner man throwing in towel, doctor stop, a 10 count outside the ring and a disqualification. 5. Illegal acts are biting, head butting, attacking the eyes or the groin, hair pulling, blows to the spine, using the elbow unless both fighters agree to waive the rule, attacking after a knockdown, walking out of the ring or throwing an opponent out of the ring. We have tentative lineups for both the WCW and WWF pay-per-view shows in August. The WCW show will be a free outdoor show on August 10th from Sturgis, South Dakota called Hog Wild, with some of the matches being the Giant vs. Hulk Hogan for the WCW title, Sting and Lex Luger vs. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, Ric Flair defending the U.S. title against Eddie Guerrero, Harlem Heat vs. Rick and Steiner for the WCW tag titles, Rey Mysterio Jr. defending the WCW Cruiserweight title against Ultimo Dragon or Jushin Liger, Chris Benoit vs. Kevin Sullivan in some sort of a gimmick match, Scott Norton vs. Ice Train and Medusa vs. Bull Nakano in some sort of a gimmick match. It's going to be a real test for WCW because its previous free outdoor pay-per-view show, the 1995 Bash at the Beach from Huntington Beach, California, was a total fiasco live and among the worst pay-per-view shows in history. This will again be tough because it'll be a largely non-wrestling fan crowd, and the show will last 5 hours, from 6 to 11 p.m. Eastern, because they are doing the card on a Saturday night and will be doing a 2-hour live WCW Saturday night show preceding the pay-per-view itself. The WWF's annual SummerSlam show, traditionally its #2 show of the year, will be August 18th from the Gund Arena in Cleveland. As of July 9th, advance sales for the show were already 7,504 tickets and $240,715. It will almost assuredly end up as the second largest live wrestling gross in the United States of 1996, trailing only WrestleMania. The lineup that has been announced in Cleveland is Shawn Michaels vs. Vader for the WWF title, Ahmed Johnson vs. Owen Hart for the IC title, Ultimate Warrior vs. Davey Boy Smith, a 4-team elimination match for the tag team title with Godwins, Bodidonas, Smoking Guns, and New Rockers, Undertaker vs. Mankind, Jake Roberts vs. Jerry Lawler and Mark Mero vs. Goldust. The July 4th curse among pro wrestlers continued again this year, but not with nearly as grave circumstances as in the past. Among the past tragedies on July 4th have included the deaths of wrestlers Keith Adrian Adonis Franks, David Canadian Wildman McKigney and Pat Kelly in an auto accident near Gander, Newfoundland in 1988, the parasailing accident of Ed Brutus Beefcake Leslie in 1990, and the auto accident death of longtime referee Joey Morella in 1994. King of Pancrase champion Bas Rutten and undercard wrestler Leon Dijks were involved in an auto accident on July 4th in Holland. We don't have a lot of details regarding the accident or the injuries each man suffered other than it was a serious accident and Rutten is expected to be bedridden for a few weeks. He'll definitely be out of action on the Pancrase shows later this month, but is expected to return on September 7th to face Masakatsu Funaki in a title match at Tokyo Bay NK Hall. Results: June 25th, Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLO, Lady Apache and Lady Connors be La Infernal and Lady Star, Supremo 2 and Nuevo Lynx and Kundra be Angel de Plata and Pegaso and Kung Fu Jr., Atlantico and Tsubasa and Kung Fu Jr. be Yone Jinjin and Zumbido and Damian El Guerrero, Silver King and Olympico and Mascara Magica be Negro Casas and Rey Bucanero and Guerrero de la Muerte, Dos Caras and La Fiera and Atlantis be Cajos and Felino and Gran Marcus Jr. DQ. June 26th, Naucalpan, Triple A, Jalissa and Zine be Fugitiva and Practicanti, Azor and Dr. Cerebro and Bestia Salvaje not original, be Fantasy and Oriental and Revolutionario winners and Super Colo and Salsero be Super Crazy and Perro Silva and El Mosco DQ, Mascara Sagrada Jr. and El Con Dorado Jr. and Tinieblas Jr. and Blue Demon Jr. be Los Payasos and Super Muñeco DQ Conan and La Parca and Mascara Sagrada, New, be Jerry Estrada and Heavy Metal and Pierroth Jr. June 28, Mexico City Arena, Mexico, EMLL 2000, Escudero Rojo and Reyes Velos be Filoso and Alacron de Durango, Olympico and Olympus and Ultimatum be Moger and Americo Rocca and Alcon Negro Jr. DQ, Super Astro and Mascara Magica and Bronco be Black Warrior and Mano Negra and Guerrero de la Muerte. El Satanico and Felino and Negro Casas be Dandy and Silver King and Lizmark, Mascara Sagrada and Hector Garza and Rayo de Jalisco Jr. be Dr. Wagner Jr. and Bestia Salvaje and Apollo Dantes. June 28, Obi Hero All Japan Women, 2340, Genki Misae be Yumi Fukawa, Yumiko Hata and Tomoko Watanabe be Mariko Yoshida and Yoshiko Tamura, Mima Shimoda and Atsuko Mita and Tashio Yamada be Shaparita Asari and Kumiko Makawa and Saya Endo, Manami Toyota be Kaoru Ito, Kyoko Inoue and Reggie Bennett be Takako Inoue and Asia Kong. June 28, Oklahoma City, Power Zone Wrestling Alliance, Rick Garrett be Jay Knight, Wild Thing be Sean Summers DQ/DDQ Nightmare and Chopper be Slash and Damian Kincaid, Treach Phillips Jr. be Psycho DQ. June 28, Inman, South Carolina, Pro Wrestling Federation, 88, George South be Billy Jack, Not Original, Colt Justice, Kilby Gore, be Black Dragon, Rick Savage be Baby Huey, Chris Hamrick be Carolina Dreamer Core, Austin Steele and Terry Austin be Sweet Brown Sugar and Italian Stallion, Dan Jones 1 Battle Royal. June 29, Kushiro All Japan Women, 2560, Yoshiko Tamura be Genki Misae, Reggie Bennett and Shaparita Asari be Saya Endo and Kumiko Makawa, Tashio Yamada and Kyoko Inoue be Mima Shimoda and Tomoko Watanabe, Asia Kong be Atsuko Mita, Manami Toyota and Mariko Yoshida and Kaoru Ito be Yumiko Hata and Takako Inoue and Yumi Fukawa. June 29, Elmira, New York, United States Wrestling Federation, Danger and Hazard and AC Lock DDQ Stickman and Sweet Pete and Malman, Lou Marconi be Frank Stiletto, Rodney Allen and Johnny Diamond be Steve Greiger and Bad Attitude, TC Reynolds be Preston Steele, King Kala be Johnny Gunn DQ, Jimmy Snuka be Metal Maniac, Gun 1 Battle Royal. June 29, West Allis, Wisconsin, Mid-American Wrestling, 227, Russian Assassin 1 Battle Royal, Frankie DeFalco and Johnny Mercedes be Mahler and Axel Future, Barfly Mike be Farmer Vic, Spymaster be Dr. X, Chad Love be Simon Stiletto, Billy Joe Eaton be Assassin, DeFalco, Danny Dominion be Wave Rider Craig. June 29, Hayward, California, All Pro Wrestling, 68 sellout/free videotaping, Robert Thompson be Boom Boom Kamini, Dwayne Jones be Donovan Morgan, Eric O'Grady be Chris Cole, Mike Diamond be Steve Rizzono, Michael Modest be Matt Hyson. June 29, Munford, Tennessee, American Wrestling Alliance, Mike Williams be Freddie Rich, Mr. USA be Ripley Prim, Motley Cruz be Romeo Valentine, Todd Johnson be Johnny Reb DQ, Derek King be Midnight Cowboy, Blade Boudreaux and Tim White be JT Storm and Blackjack Daniels, Terry Golden be Denny be Good, Jimmy Valiant be David Denton and Lady Vixen. June 29, Waynesboro, Virginia, Dominion Wrestling Association, 80, Mr. Big Stuff be Rockin' Rebel, Not Original, John Masters and Latin Lover, Not Original, be Patriot, Not Original, and Mercenary David Jericho, David Cash, and Doug Gibson, Doug Ward, be Lady Killer and Stacy Burke. Jericho be Chris Hamrick, Preston Michaels be R.C. Lovin. June 30, Dundalk, MD, Mid-Eastern Wrestling Federation, 506, Romeo Valentino be Adam Flash, Cat Burglar be Johnny Desire, Bob Starr be Pat Patterson Jr., Headbangers be Dark Rebel, Chuck Williams, and Glenn Osborne to win MEWF Tag Titles, Steve Corino be Earl the Pearl, Jimmy Cicero be Boo Bradley, Knuckles Sandwich be Mark Schrader, Mad Dog O'Malley be Johnny Taylor, Axel Rotten and Corporal Punishment be Johnny Gunn and Joe Thunder Rotten be Punishment to win MEWF title. June 30, Asbury Park, New Jersey, New Jack City Wrestling, Ace Darling be Nomad, Rick Ratchet be Rocco Dorsey, Misfits be Bobby G and Reckless Youth, Ghetto Blaster be Devon Storm DQ, Mike Sharp be Cannon, Supernova be Rockin' Rico, Cujo the Hellhound and Magic and Hellraiser be Gino and Lucifer and Mr. Puerto Rico, Jimmy Snuka be King Kala. June 30, Martinsburg, West Virginia, National Wrestling League, Adrian Hall be Egon Ecton, Doug Deeds be Julio Sanchez, Neil Superior be Mark Mest, Corporal Punishment be Johnny Gunn, Shane Shadows and Switchblade be Grungers, Deeds 1 Battle Royal, Nikolai Volkov be King Kong Bundy. July 1, Memphis, USWA, 1300 Miss Texas be Samantha, Brickhouse Brown and Reggie be Fine be Moondogs DQ, Coco Ware be Dirty White Boy, USWA Tag Titles, Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee be Flex Cabana and Bart Sawyer to win titles, Bill Dundee be Wolfie D. Moondog Spot 1 Moondog Battle Royal, Jeff Jarrett and Goldust be Brian Christopher and Doug Gilbert. July 1st Asahi Kawa All Japan Women, Genki Misae B Yoshiko Tamura, Reggie Bennett and Kumiko Ma Kawabe Tomoko Watanabe and Saya Endo, Yumiko Hata and Takako Inoue and Yumi Fukawa B Mima Shimoda and Atsuko Mita and Toshio Yamada, Kyoko Inoue B Marco Yoshida, Asia Kong and Shaparita Asari B Manami Toyota and Kaoru Ito. July 1st Toronto ONT, Indiana Hurricane Hugo B Mad Dog Rex, Farmer Pete and Night Stalker B Pee Wee Jones and Bill Scullion, Johnny Paradise B Zach Wild, Tony Parisi and Two Hip Sean and Jason Sterling B Missing Link Original and Bruiser Bedlam and Dan Johnson. July 1st Miami, Florida, Sunshine Wrestling Federation, former Cannibal B Todd Sampson, Clay Hatfield B Bobby Davis, Bounty Hunters B Paul Adonis and Tony Style, Vampire Warrior B Navy SEAL Clint Esteban B J.R. James, George Suave B Johnny Attitude Johnny Torres B Punk Rock, Hatfield B Johnny Golden. July 2nd London, England, All-Star Promotions Legend of Doom, Johnny South, B Skull Murphy DQ, Superflies B Stevie Gray and Zebra Kid, Mighty Chang B Rico the Gladiator, Chang 1 Battle Royal, Dirt Bike Kid D Doc Dean. July 3rd Aomori, New Japan, Yuji Nagata B Yutaka Yoshi, Norio Onaga B Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Brad Armstrong B Tokumitsu Ishizawa, Akira Nagami B Shinjiro Otani, Kunyaki Kobayashi and Akitoshi Saito B Jushin Liger and El Samurai, Hawk and Animal and Power Warrior B Tadao Yasuda and Masa Saito and Keiji Muto, Satoshi Kojima and Shinya Hashimoto B Michiyoshi Ohara and Tatsutoshi Goto, Riki Chashu and Takashi Iizuka and Osamu Nishimura B Masa Chono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan and Hiro Saito. July 3rd Marukame, All Japan, Masao Inoue B Kentaro Shiga, Tsuyoshi Kikuchi B Satoru Asako, Brian Dieta and Takao Mori B Rob Van Dam and Bobby Duncombe Jr., Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi B Giant Baba, and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota, Ryukaku Izumaya and Giant Kimala 2B Mark and Chris Youngblood, Kena Kobashi and Jun Akiyama B Johnny Smith and The Patriot, Stan Hansen and Gary Albright B Mitsuharu Misawa and Tamon Honda, Kiritao and Toshiaki Kawada and Yoshinari Ogawa B Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Manukia Mossman. July 3rd Aguascalientes, AAA, Salsero and Winners and Super Colobi Super Crazy and Parasil and El Mosco, Los Payasos B Tinieblas Jr. and Alcon Dorado Jr. and Blue Demon Jr. DQ, Killer B Mascara Sagrada, Pierroth Jr. and Jerry Estrada and Psychosis B Kanan and La Parka and Octagon. July 3rd Wakanai, All Japan Women, Genki Misae B Yumi Fukawa, Shaparita Asari B Saya Endo, Asia Kong and Takako Inoue B Mariko Yoshida and Kaoru Ito, Manami Toyota B Kumiko Makawa, Kyoko Inoue and Reggie Bennett and Tomoko Watanabe B Mima Shimoda and Atsuko Mita and Toshio Yamada. July 4th Morioka, New Japan, 2650, Akitoshi Saito B Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Akira Nagami B Tokumitsu Ishizawa, Takashi Iizuka B Brad Armstrong, El Samurai B Norio Onaga, Michiyoshi Ohara and Kengo Kimura B Tadao Yasuda and Osamu Nishimura, Hawk and Animal and Power Warrior B Satoshi Kojima and Masa Saito and Shinya Hashimoto, Keiji Muto and Jushin Liger B Tatsutoshi Goto and Kunyaki Kobayashi, Masa Chono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan and Hiro Saito B Shinjiro Otani and Yuji Nagata and Riki Chashu. July 4th Matsuyama, All Japan, 2300 Manukia Mossman and Satoru Asako and Tamon Honda B Kentaro Shiga and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Yoshinari Ogawa, Ryukaku Izumida B Masao Inoue, Brian Diet and The Patriot B Mark and Chris Youngblood, Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota B Masafuchi and Haruka Eigen and Mighty Inoue, Steve Williams and Johnny Ace B Rob Van Dam and Johnny Smith, Toshiaki Kawada B Giant Kimala 2, Gary Albright and Kena Kobashi B Stan Hansen and Bobby Duncombe Jr., Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama B Akira Tao and Takao Omori 2139. July 4th Oklahoma City, Power Zone Wrestling Alliance, 11,500 Free Show, Country Boy Kelly B Psycho DQ, TNT B Bad Boy, Oklahoma Kid B Wild Thing, Sean Summers DDQ Treach Phillips Jr., Randy Rhodes and Rick Garrett and Casey Cannon B Slash and Doug Masters and Damian Kincaid. July 4th Clinton, South Carolina, Southern Championship Wrestling, 318, Freedom Fighter B Russian Assassin, J.W. Steele B Butcher Blackwell, Johnny Dollar B Max Miles DQ, J.J. Justice B Nightmare, Mickey Free and Ricky Regal B SWAT, Steve Carlton and Cruiser Lewis, Wahoo McDaniel and Rick McDaniel B Desperado and Jake Mulligan. Terry Randall, July 4th Maydan, North Carolina, Indiana, 350, Kryptonite B. Alan Wayne, Jimmy Valiant B. Frank Parker, Dan Cooley B. Sir Warren, David Kobe Skinhead, Heartbreak Express B. America's Most Wanted. July 4th, Kings Mountain, North Carolina, North American Wrestling Association, 196, Crazy Kane Adams, Chad Bird, B. Scotty McKeever, Homeboy, Mike Ray, B. Colt Justice, Philby Gore, Flaming Youth, James Clintz, B. Scotty Hot Body, Scott Bradley, American GI, Rich Scruggs, B. Rick Starr, Dozer, J.R. Scruggs, B. Mad Dog, David Lynch. July 4th, Rome, Georgia, North Georgia Wrestling Alliance, Ken Timms B. Kenny D., Brandy B. Amberlynn, Dusty Dotson B. Kaminari, Ken and John Arden B. Jason Valentine and Keith Arden, Steve Lawler B. Superstar, Nasty Critters B. Ken and John Arden. July 4th, Bakersfield, California, Slammers, Hombre de Oro B. El Toro Bravo, Tyrone Little B. Vern Langdon, El Espirito B. Pete Malloy, Samoan Kid and Hombre de Oro B. Dynamite D. and Little Jeff Lindbergh B. Bruce Bodine. July 5th, East Rutherford, New Jersey, Continental Arena, WWF, 7309, Duke Drosy B. Leaf Cassidy, Salvatore Sincere, Tom Brandy, B. Barry Horowitz, bodied on as one triangular match over Smoking Guns and Godwins, WWF title, Shawn Michaels B. Vader DQ, IC title, Ahmed Johnson B. Goldust Cord, no DQ, Steve Austin B. Savio Vega, Jake Roberts B. Justin Bradshaw, Mark Marrow B. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Undertaker B. Mankind. July 5th, Towada, New Japan, 2000, Shinjiro Otani B. Akitoshi Saito, El Samurai B. Yutaka Yoshi, Kengo Kimura B. Norio Onaga, Michiyoshi Ohara and Tatsutoshi Goto B. Tatsuhito Takaiwa and Yuji Nagata, Akira Nagami and Kunyaki Kobayashi B. Jushin Liger and Brad Armstrong, Hiroyoshi Tenzan B. Tadao Yasuda, Satoshi Kojima and Shinya Hashimoto B. Hiro Saito and Masa Chono, Hulk and Animal and Power Warrior B. Osamu Nishimura and Takashi Iizuka and Keiji Muto. July 5th, Osaka, All Japan, 2050 Sellout, Masao Inoue B. Kentaro Shiga, Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi B. Mitsuo Momota and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Rusher Kimura, Rob Van Dam and Giant Kimala 2B. Chris and Mark Youngblood, Yoshinari Ogawa and Takao Mori and Akira Taubi Manukia Mossman and Satoru Asako and Giant Baba, Stan Hansen and Bobby Duncombe Jr. B. Johnny Smith and Brian Diet, Gary Albright and Tamon Honda B. Ryukaku Izumida and Toshiaki Kawada, Mitsuharu Misawa and Kena Kobashi and Jun Akiyama B. Steve Williams and Johnny Ace, and The Patriot. July 5th, Mexico City Arena, Mexico, EMLL, 3000, One-Night Grand Prix Tournament, Felino B. Tiger Mask, Shocker B. Black Warrior, Bestia Salvaje B. One Jinjin, Great Sasuke B. Rey Bucanero, Mascara Magica B. Mr. Niebla, Dandy B. Astro Rey Jr., El Eo del Santo B. Negro Casas, Guerrero de la Muerte B. Bronco, Felino B. Shocker, Sasuke B. Salvaje, Magica B. Dandy, Santo B. Guerrero de la Muerte, Sasuke B. Felino, Santo B. Magica Core, Santo B. Sasuke to win tournament. July 5th, Tijuana, Norte, California, AAA 3000, X-Men 1 and 2 and 3B Shamu and Los Chacales 2 and 3, Leon Negro and Thunderbird and Tigra and Mascarado B. El Hijo del Enfermero and Genghis Khan and Bronx Bomber Tony Arce and Vulcano and Rocco Valente B. Los Pandilleros 1 and 2 and 3, Ultimo Dragon and Super Muñeco and Pantera B. Misterioso and Halloween and Weechol DQ, Street Fight Cage Match, Damien and Psychosis B. Rey Mysterio Jr. and Conan. July 5th, Moronin, All Japan Women, 2540, Genki Misae B. Yumi Fukawa, Tashio Yamada B. Tomoko Watanabe, Manami Toyota and Mariko Yoshida and Kaoru Ito B. Shaparita Asari and Kumiko Makawa and Saya Endo, Reggie Bennett B. Atsuko Mita, Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue B. Asia Kong and Mima Shimoda. July 5th, Fall Branch, Tennessee, Southern States Wrestling, Christian Brothers and Alan King B. Cooper Brothers and Sir Warren, TCB Man B. Steve Flynn, Frank Parker and Roger Anderson B. Ricky Morton and Dan Cooley, Manny Fernandez B. Killer Kyle, Jimmy Valiant B. Major De Beers, Bo James B. Scott Sterling. July 5th, Rome, Ga, North Georgia Wrestling Alliance, Dusty Dotson B. Kaminari, Brandy B. Marie Lavoie, Mike Golden B. Jason Valentine DQ, Brandy B. Amber Lynn, Ken Arden B. Billy Love, Steve Lawler B. Ken Timms, Keith Arden D. John Arden, Kid Ego and Jailhouse Rocker B. Nasty Critters. July 6th, New Haven, Connecticut, WWF, 4462, Duke Drosy B. Leaf Cassidy, Salvatore Sincere B. Barry Horowitz, Undertaker B. Mankind, Mark Marrow B. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Bodied on as one triangle match over Smoking Guns and God wins. Jake Roberts beat Justin Bradshaw. Steve Austin beat Savio Vega. IC title. Bulldust beat Ahmed Johnson DQ. WWF title. Shawn Michaels beat Vader DQ. July 6th Enon, All Japan, 2,400 sellout. Satoru Asako beat Masao Inoue. Rob Van Dam beat Bobby Duncombe Jr. Tamon Honda and Takao Mori beat Mark and Chris Youngblood. Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momoto beat Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Masa Fuchi. Johnny Smith and Johnny Ace beat Giant Kimala2 and Ryukaku Izumida. Gary Albright and Stan Hansen beat Brian Diet and Steve Williams. Mitsuharu Misawa beat The Patriot. Akira Tao and Toshiaki Kawada and Yoshinari Ogawa beat Kena Kobashi and Jun Akiyama and Manukiya Mossman 23-38. July 6th Kanagawa, JWP, Rieko Amano beat Fuseo Naochi, Commando Boishoi beat Yuki Miyazaki, Kandi Akutsu beat Tomoko Kuzumi, Hiromi Yagi and Hikari Fukuoka beat Tomoko Miyaguchi and Amano, Miyaguchi and Cutie Suzuki and Devil Masami beat Dynamite Kansai and Kuzumi and Naochi. July 6th Graz, Austria CWA, Steve Wright beat Klaus Koroff, Otto Wands beat Rene Lazartes, CWA middleweight title, Franz Schumann beat David Finlay to win title, CWA HWT title, Ludwig Borga beat August Smile. July 6th Rome, Georgia, North Georgia Wrestling Alliance, Jason Valentine beat Dino Stone, Superstar beat Tim Prather, Brandy beat Lady Mandy, Jailhouse Rocker beat Keith Arden, Ken and John Arden beat Scott Prather and Dusty Dotson. July 7th Tokyo Bay NK Hall, Valley Tudo, 7,000 sellout, Alex Cook beat Tomoaki Hayama, Mustaq Abdullah beat Sanae Kikuta, Yumiko Hata beat Margot Niehoft, Ed de Kreif beat Joe Estes, Todd Bjornithan beat Eric Lavin, Dan Severn beat Doug Murphy, Ruben Asado beat John Lewis, Igor Zinoviev beat Ensign Inoue, Royler Gracie beat Naburo Asahi. July 7th Aomori, New Japan 3000, Akitoshi Saito beat Yutaka Yoshi, Hiro Saito beat Kunyaki Kobayashi, Akira Nagami beat Yuji Nagata, Brad Armstrong and El Samurai and Jushin Liger beat Tatsuhito Takaiwa and Tokumitsu Ishizawa and Shinjiro Otani, Hawk and Animal and Power Warrior beat Masa Saito and Keiji Muto and Riki Chashu, Masa Chono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan beat Tadao Yasuda and Takashi Iizuka, Shinya Hashimoto and Osamu Nishimura and Satoshi Kojima and Ishizawa beat Michiyoshi Ohara and Tatsutoshi Goto and Akitoshi Saito and Kengo Kimura. July 7th Kyoto, All Japan, 2,350 Masao Inoue and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi beat Satoru Asako and Yoshinobu Kanemaru, Johnny Smith beat Brian Diet, Tamon Honda and Ryukaku Izumida beat Chris and Mark Youngblood, Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Masa Fuchi beat Mitsuo Momoto and Rusher Kimura and Giant Baba. Asian Tag Title, Jun Akiyama and Takao Omori beat Rob Van Dam and Manukiya Mossman 2022. Akira Tao beat Giant Kimala2, Johnny Ace and The Patriot and Steve Williams beat Bobby Duncombe Jr. and Stan Hansen and Gary Albright. Mitsuharu Misawa and Kena Kobashi beat Toshiaki Kawada and Yoshinari Ogawa 2020. July 7th Tokyo Korakuen Hall, JWP, 1,980 sellout, Kandi Akutsu beat Tomoko Miyaguchi, Akutsu beat Fuseo Naochi, Sugar Sato and Rieko Amano beat Yuki Miyazaki and Commando Boishoi, Devil Masami beat Tomoko Kuzumi, Takako Inoue beat Hiromi Yagi, JWP Tag Titles, Cutie Suzuki and Dynamite Kansai beat Hikari Fukuoka and Kaoru 2041. July 7th Noaji, All Japan Women, Saya Endo beat Yoshiko Tamura, Tashio Yamada beat Kumiko Makawa, Manami Toyota and Kaoru Ito beat Shaparita Asari and Tashio Yamada, Reggie Bennett beat Mima Shimoda, Asia Kong and Tomoko Watanabe beat Etsuko Mita and Kyoko Inoue. July 7th Kawasaki, LLPW, 520 Keiko Aono beat Wadab, Michiko Nagashima beat Mizuki Endo, Rumi Kazama and Norio Tadano beat Mikiko Futagami and Carol Midori, Kurula, Arlie Saito beat Sorio Kino, Eagle Sawai and Yasha Kuranai beat Michiko Omukai and Shinobu Kondori. July 7th Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Indiana, 500 Crazy Brooks beat Mike Larea, Ninja beat Bobby Rogers, Disco Donnie beat Skullcrusher, War Machine beat Lighting Lash, Bugsy McGraw and the Clown beat Greg Valentine and Jerry Gray. July 8th Orlando, Florida Disney Studios, WCW Monday Nitro tapings, 600 sellout / all freebies, WCW Cruiserweight title, Rey Mysterio Jr. beat Dean Malenko to win title 4 1/4 stars, Steve Regal and David Taylor beat Big Bubba and Hugh Morris 1/2 of 1 star, Eddie Guerrero beat Psicosis 3 3/4 stars, Rick and Scott Steiner beat Nasty Boys 1 1/4 stars, U.S. title, Ric Flair beat Jim Powers 1 3/4 stars, Chris Benoit beat Craig Pittman 1 star, Sting beat Arnold Anderson 1 1/4 stars. July 9, Kanazawa, All Japan, 4,250 sellout. Satoru Asako beat Kentaro Shiga, Chris and Mark Youngblood and Bobby Duncombe Jr. beat Masao Inoue and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Yoshinari Ogawa, Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota beat Mighty Inoue and Masa Fuchi, Brian Diet and Gary Albright beat Rob Van Dam and The Patriot, Giant Baba and Stan Hansen and Haruka Eigen beat Tamon Honda and Ryukaku Izumida and Giant Kimala 2, Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Johnny Smith beat Manukia Mossman and Takawa Mori and Kenta Kobashi, PWF and International Tag Titles, Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama beat Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao 26-42. Special thanks to Corey Van Cook, Louis Cobb, Dan Paris, Michael Payne, Bernard Siegel, Walt Spafford, Greg John, Mike Omonski, Ken Bevan, Jason Harrison, Faye Ferguson, Dominic Valenti, Jeff Osborne, Neziba Mario, Danny Deese, Peggy Watkins, Bob Garst, Brandy Arnold, Jeff Bowdren, Jesse Money, Ron Rivera, Steve Dr. Luchas. Japanese Television Rundown. June 2, All Japan. 1. Kawada beat Kobashi to earn the title shot with a high kick to the face. Only the last 3 minutes aired on television. Based on the heat and intensity in the crowd, and the work on what aired, this appeared to have been a tremendous match. 2. Tao pinned Misawa to win the Triple Crown. An excellent match with a lot of big spots. Tao DDT'd Misawa on the floor. Misawa came back doing a forearm plancha and a rolling bodyblock off the apron to the floor, and got a near fall with a frog splash. Tao made a comeback German suplexing Misawa on his head twice and got a near fall for the dynamic bomb. The crowd popped big when Misawa kicked out of one of Tao's big moves even though it was the 9:20 mark, which shows the crowd has been educated not to wait until the 20-minute mark as with last year into believing it could be the finish. Misawa also kicked out of the Nadawa. Misawa made a comeback using his Tiger Driver but Tao kicked out. Finally Misawa came off the top rope for a flying clothesline but Tao caught him in the throat and planted him with a Nadawa for the title change. 4 stars 1/4. June 9, All Japan. 1. Tao beat Kawada in 17:28 to retain the Triple Crown. This was a disappointment considering who was involved and the stakes. They had a hard time getting heat because they were following an all-time classic, Misawa and Akiyama vs. Williams and Ace. Tao just looked okay. They had some good flurries and overall it was a solid match. After getting a near fall with a dynamic bomb, Liger Bomb, Tao got the pin after 2 choke slams. 3 stars. June 16, All Japan. 1. Misawa and Akiyama retained the tag titles beating Williams and Ace. The match itself lasted 30 minutes, about 23 minutes of which were on television. Along with Mysterio Jr. vs. Guerrero from Philadelphia and the match where Misawa and Akiyama beat Tao and Kawada to win the tag titles, one of the 3 best matches of the year. For pure execution it ranked behind both of those matches but for drama ranked ahead of any match this year, including Michaels Diesel. Williams actually looked pretty sloppy when it came to selling at times. Ace was very good, but he's no Kawada. Misawa and Akiyama are out of this world. The match consisted of Williams doing a killer move on one or the other, and the other having to work by himself for several minutes before his partner made a comeback. Williams used Misawa's own Tiger suplex on him. At one point Misawa used a rolling plancha on Ace and followed with a forearm tope on Williams, then a frog splash and German suplex on Ace. Williams used a backdrop driver on Akiyama, knocking him out. Misawa rolled Akiyama out of the ring to the floor so he couldn't get pinned. Williams and Ace then used a double impact on Misawa and he rolled out of the ring. Williams threw Akiyama in but he kicked out of a pin. Akiyama kicked out of the Ace Crusher. Williams used a throw-out German suplex on Misawa. Ace used a Cobra suplex on Akiyama. Akiyama finally hit a German suplex on Ace for a near fall and then did his exploder suplex. Actually from the commentary it sounds like exploder suplex, but Williams made the save. Akiyama used a Northern Lights and another exploder. Misawa finally KO'd Williams using a Tiger Driver on the floor and a Tiger suplex on Ace. Akiyama then kept getting near falls using the exploder on Ace until he got the pin for the 4th one. 5 stars. June 22, New Japan. 1. Black Tiger pinned Wild Pegasus in a semi-final at the top of the Super Junior tourney in 2017. The last 9 minutes aired on television and it was a fantastic match. Pegasus dominated since he was doing the job at the end. All sorts of great near falls ending with Tiger getting the pin using a brainbuster off the top rope. 4.5 stars. 2. Liger pinned Samurai with La Magistral in 15:11. The last 10 minutes aired on television. It was all action with a lot of great moves back and forth. 3.75 stars. 3. Yamazaki and Iizuka beat Kido and Sasaki in 10:53 when Iizuka made Kido submit to a knee bar. 3 stars. 4. Hashimoto retained the IWGP title pinning Kojima in 11:51. Kojima has some great fire coming to the ring. He's like a Jim Duggan or a Scott Norton in that he looks like he's a star coming to the ring. In the ring, he's better than Duggan or Norton, although he's only an average wrestler at this point. Hashimoto is a great world champion and showed it here, having a solid world title match with a wrestler who really isn't of that caliber. After Kojima missed a sloppy moonsault, Hashimoto put him away with an Enzuigiri and a brainbuster. 3.25 stars. EMLL. The company's biggest show thus far in 1996 on July 5 at Arena Mexico drew only 3,000 fans for the 16-man Torneo Grand Prix Junior Tournament, which was won by Leo Del Santo, beating Great Sasuke in the championship match in what was said to have been a 3 stars match. Since it was a one-night tournament, most of the matches were short and action-packed. The only other foreigner brought in was Tiger Mask from Michinoku Pro, who lost in the first round to Felino in a disappointing match. Tiger Mask was said to have been bothered by the altitude and also by never having worked before in Mexico. Sasuke beat Rey Bucanero in the first round, which was said to have been Bucanero's best match all year. Bestia Salvaje in the second round. Felino in the third round, said to have been too short. Santo opened beating Negro Casas in a short match, followed by Guerrero de la Muerte and Mascara Magica before going to the final. Sasuke and Tiger Mask were in EMLL for 3 days, largely to scout talent. On July 6, they were at Pista Arena Revolcan in Mexico City, teaming with Atlantis to beat Negro Casas and Dr. Wagner Jr. and El Satanico when Sasuke pinned Casas in the third fall. This was to set up a match on July 7 at Arena Coliseo, where Sasuke challenged to Casas for Casas' NWA welterweight title, which we don't have results of. Tiger Mask was to team with Vampiro and Lizmark against Violencia, Pirata Morgan, and Satanico and Black Warrior, who is very good, in the semi. TV Azteca, Channel 13 in Mexico City, will start airing Promel on a weekly basis every Saturday afternoon starting on July 13. The first taping was held on July 6. This station is available in the U.S. to Dish owners. Lizmark Jr., who has been out of action with a broken leg since December of 1994, was expected back in action starting on July 3. On June 20 in Mexico City, during a match where Brazo de Oro was defending his Distrito Federal Heavyweight title against Rambo in a non-worked spot, suddenly collapsed in the second fall. Since it was a title match, they had a doctor at ringside who rushed in. As it turned out, it was only a severe attack brought on by bronchitis. With the situation with Oro and Pentagon in recent years, everyone freaked out when a guy suddenly collapsed in the ring. Rambo should be back in action before you read this. Brazo de Plata Jr., a third-generation wrestler from probably the largest wrestling family in the world, the Alvarado family of Mexico, will debut this month. He's 15 or 16. AAA. The July 12th show in Phoenix will take place at the Celebrity Theater, and they run the Grand Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles on July 13th, which for those of you who grew up in the early 70s watching the Olympic Auditorium wrestling or roller games, both of which were syndicated nationally, they still have the single most famous phone number in the world in either English or Spanish for the joint, Richmond 95171. I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback after the fact, but until they improve their television situation in the United States, they aren't going to be able to run profitable shows. The final Triple Mania will be July 15th in Madero, headlined by a cage match with Los Payasos and Cars La Momia versus the Atomic Juniors, Halcón Dorado Jr. and Team Nieblas Jr. and Mascara Sagrada Jr. and Blue Demon Jr., with the final man in the cage losing his mask. Conan vs. Pierre Roth Jr. in a Pit Bull Terrier dog collar match, Rey Mysterio Jr. vs. Juventud Guerrera in a car vs. car match, Mascara Sagrada vs. Killer, Pero Aguayo and Los Villanos 3 and 4 vs. Octagon and Cien Caras and Psicosis in a Parejas Increíbles, Incredible Partners, match, a match to determine the first Relevos Atomicosh, 4-man team Mexican national champions with La Parca and Pantera and Ultimo Dragon and Latin Lover vs. Jerry Estrada and Villano 5 and Fishman and Pimpinela Escarlata, and the opener has Mascarada Sagrada and Super Muñequito and Mini Frisbee vs. Espectritos 1 and 2 and La Parquita. The television over the past month in some ways has been the best of any promotion in the world. Best as far as pure match quality, because in every other way, the TV is totally primitive compared with the rest of the world when it comes to production, God-awful, crowd-micing, even worse. And overall pacing nothing but wrestling with no interviews or vignettes. Nevertheless, watching Lucha Lunes after Nitro and Raw on Mondays, usually no matter what WWF and WCW air, the AAA matches last are like a breath or fresh air because the work is usually several steps ahead. On this past weekend's Galavision taped June 23rd in Morelia, they had a 4 stars plus match with Mysterio Jr. and Tinieblas Jr. and Dorado Jr. and Demon Jr. beating Super Crazy and Picudo and Heavy Metal and Jerry Estrada via DQ. Mascara Sagrada Jr. was at ringside in a neck brace selling the Tombstone Piledriver delivered in Tijuana by Damien 666. The heels all attacked him, bringing out Mascara Sagrada Jr., who is just about the tiniest mini you'll ever see. Estrada then attacked the mini and laid him out. Finally, the new Mascara Sagrada did a run-in. Tinieblas Jr. had to carry Mascara out on his shoulder because the stretcher was carrying out Mascara Jr. However, Heavy broke the stretcher over Dorado Jr.'s back. In the third fall, Mysterio Jr. and Demon Jr. did simultaneous Frankensteiners off the top rope. In the Wrestling War in Tijuana, Kiss, Pero, Russo and Depredator all jumped from Conan's side to Miguel Lopez, Rey Mysterio, while Misterioso and Huichol jumped to Conan's side. The current plan by Conan is to build up a feud between Mysterio Jr. and Misterioso in Tijuana to climax in September with a mask versus mask match at the outdoor stadium. There will be a major show on July 14th in Tijuana since virtually the entire top crew will be in Los Angeles the night before and working Triple Mania the night after, but the lineup wasn't completed at press time. They ran Tijuana on July 5th with Conan and Mysterio Jr. versus Damien and Psicosis in a street fight cage match which was done ECW style, in which they broke several tables, used 4 chairs, a barbed wire baseball bat, eggs, golf clubs, a truck tire, a VCR, a television set, light bulbs and a garbage can as weapons. The show drew about 3,000. The back of Conan's head was split open from light bulbs and his arm was cut up as well, as was evident on the pay-per-view. Psicosis was also heavily busted open, although you couldn't tell on the pay-per-view because he's masked. Halloween did a run-in and they put a real pumpkin on his head and Mysterio Jr. hit and smashed the pumpkin with a chair so hard that Halloween had a huge welt on his head the size of his hand. Conan put eggs on Damien's groin and smashed them on him with a golf club. Super Muñeco got super heat turning heel on Ultimo Dragon and La Parca in the semifinal, and they started a feud between locals Los Pandilleros, who got a babyface reaction, taking on Los Destructors. July 6th in Mexicali drew 2,000. Conan and Mysterio Jr. had to work early in the show and beat Psicosis and Halloween in a short match because they had to catch a flight to make the pay-per-view show. Also, Ultimo Dragon beat Damien in a strap match and in what was described as the single worst mask versus mask match in the history of mankind. El Psicodelico beat Frankenstein. It was so bad they were blowing even the simplest of spots, although 60-year-old Psicodelico did do a tope, which is actually kind of impressive if you think about it. All Japan. Biggest match of the past week was July 9th in Kanazawa before a sellout 4,250 fans as Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama retained the double tag team titles, beating Akira Tao and Toshiaki Kawada in 26:42 when Misawa pinned Tao after a tiger suplex. This should set up a Tao vs Misawa Triple Crown match later this year. The other title match was on July 7th in Kyoto before 2,350 as All-Asian Tag Champions Takao Omori and Akiyama surprisingly retained their titles, beating Rob Van Dam and Manukia Mossman when Omori pinned Mossman. Also at the Kanazawa show, they held a special ceremony honoring Haruka Eigen in his hometown for completing 30 years in pro wrestling. Eigen, 50, who works the undercard comedy match, got to team with Giant Baba, his usual rival, and Stan Hansen to beat Giant Kimala-2 and Ryukaku Izumida and Tamon Honda. Another newcomer to this group is Yoshinobu Kanemaru, 19 years old, who is about 5'7", 165 pounds, who had his first pro match on July 7th in Kyoto teaming with Satoru Asako, losing to Masao Inoue and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi. The July 24th Budokan Hall card, besides the already announced double main event of Tao defending against Kenta Kobashi and Kawada vs Gary Albright, will have Hansen and the Patriot and Mossman vs Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Johnny Smith, Misawa and Akiyama and Honda vs Baba and Kimala-2 and Izumida and Masa Fuchi defending the PWF Junior title against Kikuchi. It's almost amazing to see a Budokan card with Misawa fourth from the top and in really a nothing match. The June 30th, taped the previous night at Korakuen Hall, TV show did a 2.1 rating. New Japan. Kazuo Yamazaki is out of action with a broken finger. Hiroshi Hashi will wrestle on July 26th in his hometown of Kanazawa, which is the biggest city in the district he represents as a senator. It's being billed as his final match ever in his hometown. The tour on July 23rd to July 29th will be called the Dragon Legend Tour and feature no foreign talent, and headlined every night by Tatsumi Fujinami. War wrestlers Koki Kitahara, Nobutaka Araya and Nobukazu Hirai will work the tour. No word on the final participant in the junior heavyweight tournament at Sumo Hall. It is believed that Dan Severn's first New Japan opponent during the G1 tour will be Yoshiaki Fujiwara. A correction from last week's Observer story regarding the Olympics. Riki Choshu represented South Korea, not Japan, in the 1972 Olympic Games. For some reason that slipped my mind. It's a pretty major secret in Japan because the feeling is Choshu wouldn't be as popular if people knew he was actually Korean and not Japanese, similar to why it was never let on during Rikidozan's lifetime that he was actually Korean. Other Japan notes. Weekly Pro Wrestling announced its new editor named Hamabe, 42 years old. Hamabe was the number 2 man Big, the defunct magazine Big Wrestler, which ran weekly in 1986-87. According to other sources, the circulation of Weekly Pro had actually dropped 33% since the war began, from 150,000 to 100,000, which necessitated the change. It was clear from the response in the past week that Tarzan Yamamoto had made many enemies outside of New Japan as well, because nearly everyone who contacted us from Japan was happy to celebratory about the change. The All Japan Women's shows at Budokan Hall on August 12th and August 13th will be a combination of 2 tournaments, an Ultimate Fight tournament, announced thus far are Yumiko Hata, Linus Asuka and Reggie Bennett representing Pro Wrestling, and a tag team tournament called Discover New Hero in which an established star will team with a young wrestler and it'll be an inter-promotional tournament. The first round pairings will be Manami Toyota and Ri Tamada, AJW versus Hikari Fukuoka and Rieko Amano, JWP, Kyoko Inoue and Shaparita Asari, AJW versus Devil Masami and Tomoko Miyaguchi, JWP, Dynamite Kansai and Tomoko Kuzumi, JWP, versus Takako Inoue, AJW, Kyoko Ichiki, IWA, Bison Kimura and Yuki Lee Yoshimoto Pro versus Mima Shimoda, AJW, and Chikako Shiratori, Yoshimoto Pro, Tsuko Mitai and Genki Misae, AJW versus Tashio Yamada, AJW, and Sonoko Kato, Gia, Tomoko Watanabe and Kumiko Maekawa, AJW versus Shark Tsuchiya and Bad Nurse Nakamura, FMW Megumi Kudo and Kaori Nakayama, FMW versus Jaguar Yokota and TBA, Yoshimoto Pro and Asia Kong and Yoshiko Tamura, AJW versus Chigusa Nagio and Hirota, Gia. FMW announced an August 1st show at the Shiodome in Tokyo with Hayabusa versus Koji Nakagawa in an explosive barbed wire match on top, plus Megumi Kudo will do another women's explosive barbed wire match as well. Atsushi Onita will attend the show. The 2 ECW IWA shows in Yokohama and Korakuen Hall will have Raven and the Eliminators defending their titles, plus Tommy Dreamer, Bubba Ray Dudley, Stevie Richards, Patricia, and Kimona. There will be all kinds of gimmick matches on both shows. Shinu Kojika held a press conference to announce his tour that begins on July 19th at Korakuen Hall with a ladder match with Mitsuhiro Matsunaga, making his Big Japan debut after jumping from FMW, and Shoji Nakamaki versus Kendo Nagasaki and Seiji Yamakawa. At the press conference, Matsunaga used a soft drink cannon and cut it open and used it to juice Yamakawa in an angle. Also on the tour will be Dr. Wagner Jr. as CMLL light heavyweight champion defending his title, Aquarius, Lion Jason Knight, Bull Payne, and Mighty Kodiak. Yoshiaki Fujiwara held a press conference to announce himself against Tatsuo Nakano, formerly of UWFI, as the main event for the Dick Murdoch Memorial Show on July 27th in Kawasaki. The Pancrase schedule for the rest of the year will consist of a 2-day Neo Blood Young Wrestler tournament on July 22nd and July 23rd at Korakuen Hall, followed by September 7th at Tokyo Bay NK Hall, November 9th in Kobe, and the final show of the year on December 15th at Tokyo Sumo Hall. Besides Boss Rudin and Leon Dyke missing the July shows because of injuries suffered in the July 4th auto accident and Ken Shamrock being out after knee surgery, both Jason DeLucia and Takaku Fuke suffered cracked ribs at the June 25th card in Fukuoka and will be missing the upcoming shows. Pancrase's latest contenders ratings for Rutan's title are, in order, Frank Shamrock, Dai Mesger, Minoru Suzuki, Ken Shamrock, Masakatsu Funaki, DeLucia, Rishi Yanagisawa, Vernon White, and Manabu Yamada. Finally got to see the Yanagisawa vs. Oleg Toktarov match edited off the pay-per-view show. Toktarov pretty much dominated on the ground. Yanagisawa managed to catch him a few times and bloody him. What a shocker, huh? But Toktarov should have been an easy winner via a decision had he not lost the point for the illegal finger choke, which appear to be a case of him not understanding the rules rather than a deliberate violation out of frustration. War will tour August 25th to August 31st with Fujinami, Yoji Anjo, Big Titan Lance Storm, and Bam Bam Bigelow. Apparently ticket sales for UWFI's baseball stadium show on August 17th with Anjo vs Nobuhiko Takada as the main event are going slow. They asked Great Sasuke to work the show, which says something for a group that bills itself as shooting style to bring in a lucha libre stylist. Sasuke was asked to work against Satoru Sayama, but turned them down thinking that if Sayama was willing to do a match against him, Sasuke would rather book it on one of his own big cards. Sasuke may still work the show, however. Takada Anjo appears far too weak on paper for a 46,000-seat building, although it is part of a major fair in Japan and the wrestling show is the biggest event of the fair, so that by itself should sell a lot of tickets. Michinoku Pro has booked a whole slew of title matches between July 20th and August 3rd. Among the title matches include World Lightweight Great Britain version, champ Johnny Saint defending against Masato Yakashiji twice, Sasuke defending the IWGP Junior title against Shiryu, Kendo defending the South American middleweight title twice against Gran Naniwa and once against Shiryu, Pilato Suicida defending the WWA middleweight title against Sasuke and Super Delphin, and Gran Hamada defending the WWA Junior HWT title against Men's Teo. Tashio Yamada works the July 31st Gia show in Osaka against her idol Chigusa Nagio in a tag match. Mayumi Ozaki of JWP, who has been out of action with a broken leg and underwent surgery on June 27, did an angle on July 6 at a house show in a swimming pool area in Kanagawa. Ozaki attacked Dynamite Kansai with her crutch and wound up getting thrown into the pool. Kansai defends her JWP title against Ozaki on August 10 at Korakuen Hall. Rings has a major show set for August 24 at the Ariake Coliseum near Tokyo. USWA. The debut show at the flea market on July 1, with a ton of pub regarding the new location, drew a strong crowd of 1,300 paying $7,000, with the main event having Jeff Jarrett and Goldust beating Brian Christopher and Doug Gilbert when Frank Morrell gave Jarrett a chain which he used on Christopher for the pin. Also on the show, Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee won the USWA tag titles from Bart Sawyer and Flex Cabana. Ahmed Johnson was brought in for the July 8 show to challenge Jarrett for the unified title. They aired the various Jarrett-Johnson angles from the WWF to build the show up on tape. The rest of the July 8 card was Christopher and Gilbert versus Morrell and Tony Falk in a lumberjack strap match, Lawler and Dundee defending the tag titles against Cabana and Sawyer with Cabana putting up his hair, Dundee and Samantha versus Wolfie D and Miss Texas and Reggie B. Fine versus King Cobra. Tommy Rich is headed back. Burt Prentice and USWA have struck a deal to promote joint shows every Friday night in Jonesboro, Arkansas. The groups have run shows together in the past which have mainly been successful, but not on a weekly basis. ECW the July 5th and July 6th shows scheduled for Salisbury Beach, Massachusetts were both cancelled due to a problem with the arena. Tarzan Goto will be working the weekend shows while Gangstas vs. Samoan Gangsta Party will take place on the July 13th ECW Arena show. Sabu vs. Rob Van Dam in a stretcher match will headline the August 3rd ECW Arena show. Vampiro Canadiense from EMLL is headed in and Paul Heyman is looking at using EMLL wrestlers. ECW debuts on July 27th in Warwick, Pennsylvania with Tommy Dreamer and Terry Gordy vs. Raven and Brian Lee, Sandman vs. Taz, Chris Jericho vs. Shane Douglas for the TV title, Eliminators vs. Dudleys, and more. Sandman's son is turning into another Macaulay Culkin in that he's basically stealing the show. ECW will air on the Univision affiliate in Boston, Channel 27, at 1 a.m. Fridays, and on Channel 39 in Burlington, Vermont in the same slot, and is expected to start on Empire Sports Cable Sundays at 11 p.m. Here and there. Northeast Wrestling on July 15th in Poughkeepsie, New York has Ahmed Johnson vs. Davey Boy Smith for the IC title, Skip, Sonny, Bam Bam Bigelow, Mark Marrow, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Fatu, and Tatanka. Terry Gordy and One Man Gang have been wrestling for the CWA out of Dallas. Peach State Wrestling on August 10th in Cordell, Georgia at Williams Field has Rob Van Dam vs. Billy Black in a ladder lumberjack loser leaves town match, Abdullah the Butcher vs. Tony Atlas, Rock and Roll Express vs. Scott and Steve Armstrong who are heels here, Gorgeous George 3 vs. 2 Cold Scorpio, Rex King vs. Lee Thomas and Dave Jericho vs. Rick Savage. If you mention the Observer at the box office you get $1 off any seat in the house. More on the world of politics. New York State Senator Roy Goodman introduced two bills on successive days in January. One bill would ban UFC from New York, The other would legalize it through the State Athletic Commission. The bill to regulate it passed 55-2 in the state Senate. It still needs to pass in the Assembly and be signed by the governor, but since both the New York State Republican and Democratic parties support the bill, it is expected to pass easily. The next EFC pay-per-view show is scheduled for October 4th with Ralph Gracie vs. John Lewis as the scheduled main event. Unless EFC improves on its last buy rate, it would probably be the last EFC show, and because of that, they are trying to find a drawing card to boost the buy rate, and names like Mark Gastineau have been thrown around. The EFC story in Penthouse magazine by Eddie Goldman is in the August issue, which is now on the stands. The article mainly focused on the battle between the Native Indians and the Canadian government, focusing on the EFC behind-the-scenes events. The most noteworthy thing about the story wasn't its coverage of the event, but the fact that Penthouse, which is basically a sister company to EFC, ran an article which flatly stated that the EFC pay-per-view got a negative reaction from those who watched it. I wonder if WCW Magazine or WWF Magazine would have the balls to admit in print if they had a poor pay-per-view event. I guess we already know the answer to that one. The Quad Cities Ultimate Group, which had been running in Moline, Illinois and drew two big crowds, looks to be in trouble since Illinois Governor Jim Edgar is expected to sign a bill banning Ultimate Fighting from Illinois. The Rock Island Argus reported in the June 30th issue that the group will be moving across state lines to Davenport, Iowa, and changing from being Ultimate Fighting to promoting shoot fighting shows, since Iowa also won't allow Ultimate Fighting. The Iowa rules ban head-butting and throwing elbows on the ground, and will require foot pads and karate gloves. Great. That only makes it more dangerous and bloodier, which shows another commission that has done its homework. Matches will have 10-minute time limit and 5-minute overtimes, and if there is no decision, there will be declared a draw. The matches are also in a boxing ring rather than a cage, again another measure which shows the commission hasn't done its homework on the subject. They won't be able to hold tournaments, and opponents can't outweigh their foe by more than 20 pounds. MEWF is running August 9th in Baltimore at Teamsters Hall with Axl Rotten, Headbangers, Hack Myers and Johnny Gunn, and August 16th in Cadensville, Maryland with Bam Bam Bigelow vs. King Kong Bundy and Gunn, Headbangers and Boo Bradley. They drew 506 for their show on June 30th in Dundalk, Maryland, which saw Headbangers win the MEWF tag titles from Darkside, Chuck Williams and Glenn Osborne, and Axl Rotten wind up as heavyweight champion when Corporal Punishment, who had beaten Gunn in a tag match in a cage to get the belt, simply laid down for him. Got a newspaper clipping regarding former wrestler Nikita Koloff. Koloff Scott Simpson retired from wrestling in 1992 after receiving one of those Lloyds of London insurance settlements after suffering a hernia injury in a pay-per-view match against Vader. Koloff will be taking a religious mission to Angola this summer, while his 14 and 11-year-old daughters will be taking missions to Germany and Canada. Koloff now works with the People's Network, a television station that doesn't carry any violence, news or commercials, and does testimonials where he talks about his wrestling career and sins of the wrestling business, and his devotion to religion since his retirement. Koloff is one of many current and ex-wrestlers who do religious testimonials, among them Billy Graham, Ernie Ladd, Tully Blanchard, Ted DiBiase, Jake Roberts, and Billy Anderson. Graham, Roberts, Ladd, and DiBiase headlined a deal on June 28 in Phoenix, which was covered by both the local newspaper and the CBS affiliate. The June 23 Winnipeg Sun had a brief on former hockey star Ted Irvine, who is now the radio color commentator for the Winnipeg Jets. Irvine is the father of Chris Jericho. Century Wrestling Alliance on July 19 in Revere, Massachusetts at Delarusso Stadium and July 20 in Gloucester, Massachusetts at Dorothy Talbert Ice Arena will have Kevin Sullivan, Jimmy Snuka, Bigelow, Bundy, Devon Storm, Hugh Morris, Ace Darling, and more. Mid-American Wrestling at Wilson Park in Milwaukee on August 3 has Bigelow and Iron Sheik. The June 23 Houston Chronicle had a story on Japanese college student Junya Inadomi, who attends West Texas A&M largely because it is in Amarillo and his hero growing up was Terry Funk. Otto Wanz ran a big show on July 6 in Graz, Austria, which saw Ludwig Borga retain the CWA heavyweight title beating August Smile, who was on the Pancrase pay-per-view, and Franz Schumann won the CWA middleweight title from David Finlay. Wanz, now 53, came out of retirement to beat old nemesis Rene Lazartes, now 68. Steve Wright, the father of Alex, now 49, also came out of retirement to wrestle old rival Klaus Koroff. Schumann and Finlay will be rematched on July 27 in Vienna. An indie show in Fort Lauderdale on July 7 drew 500 fans with Greg Valentine and former local favorite Bugsy McGraw, Michael Davis, on the bill. McGraw, now 55, was announced at 271, but looked more like 371. Phil Mushnick debuts as a weekly TV sports columnist in TV Guide in the July 13th issue. WCW. Monday Nitro on July 8 from the Disney Studios in Orlando saw Rey Mysterio Jr. win the Cruiserweight title from Dean Malenko with a spinning Hurricane Rana in 12:48. This was the best of the three matches the two have had and probably the best match since Nitro debuted, 4 1/4 stars. Other results saw Steve Regal and David Taylor over Big Bubba and Hugh Morris in 3:08, 1/2 of 1 star. Eddie Guerrero pinned Psychosis with a frog splash in 8:33, 3 3/4 stars. Psychosis looked better than Guerrero in this match. Rick and Scott Steiner earned a tag title shot beating Nasty Boys in 6:08 when Colonel Parker accidentally hit Sags with a cane and Scott pinned him, 1 1/4 stars. After the match, Nasty Boys did an interview teasing they were going to join up with Hogan. Ric Flair kept the U.S. title beating Jim Powers with a figure 4 with help from Woman in 5:41, 1 3/4 stars. Chris Benoit beat Craig Pittman in 2:43 with a version of a camel clutch when Teddy Long gave up for Pittman and the two had words afterwards teasing a split, 1 star, and Sting beat Arnold Anderson with the Scorpion in 12:18, 1 1/2 star. Hall and Nash showed up during the match and Savage came out. During the melee, Sting just put Anderson in the Scorpion. Sting did one of the best interviews of his career regarding the Hogan turn, but Savage followed with inane gibberish. Hall and Nash did an absolutely horrible interview afterwards where they nearly killed the entire angle by playing babyface, and Hall even called Gene Okerlund by his first name. For such a hot feud with guys who were mouthing off to police and nearly shot the 2 previous weeks, everyone was so chummy it killed tons of heat. The first hour of Nitro was good, but the crowd energy really died in the second hour. Since the crowd is outdoors and it can get humid and much of the crowd isn't wrestling fans, their attention span is limited and it showed during the second hour. Hogan appears on the July 15th show. During the next month, all tapings will be in Orlando with the Saturday night show taped every Tuesday. At the July 9th tapings for July 13th Saturday night, Mysterio Jr. was scheduled to defend against Psychosis, Harlem Heat vs. Public Enemy. No card booked for Nitro at press time. Blood runs cold at going to be several wrestlers, one of whom will be Ray Lloyd. No ratings available at press time due to July 4th holiday holding everything up one day. Word we get is that WCW has made a 3-year $400,000 per offer to Davey Boy Smith, while Titan has countered with a $250,000 downside guarantee for 5 years. Ted DiBiase will be coming in as a television announcer in the fall, and was told he'd be added to the Nitro lineup. Crowd for the Paramount on June 30th, according to the New York State Athletic Commission, was 3,587 paid and $85,285. Lots of discussion of bringing in Chris Jericho. A correction from last week in the Olympic article. Chip Minton's 2-man bobsled team in the 1992 Olympics finished in 14th place, so they didn't medal. Keiji Muto, Kensuke Sasaki and Masa Saito will be in the U.S. from August 25th to August 30th, so they may do WCW TV during that period. Starrcade looks more and more likely to be from a foreign country, most likely Japan, in December. WWF. On the syndicated TV shows in Pittsburgh and Detroit, they apologized for Ultimate Warrior not showing up and said it was due to a contract dispute, but also mentioned that his father died. Barry Windham has been offered a contract, so odds are very good that he'll be headed in. Bret Hart is currently not under contract. 123 Kid had a meeting with Vince McMahon this past week regarding returning. Nothing definite was decided. August 9th in Madison Square Garden will be Shawn Michaels vs. Goldust, Undertaker vs. Steve Austin, Smoking Guns vs. Body Donnas, Ahmed Johnson vs. Owen Hart, Jake Roberts vs. Mankind, and over the weekend they were advertising Ultimate Warrior vs. Vader as well. If that were to take place, it would be interesting, if only because I don't see them having Vader pinned at MSG of all places 9 days before he gets a title shot on pay-per-view. They'd probably do a DQ finish because I can't see them having Warrior do a job either, if Warrior is back by that time. Basil DeVito, the longtime vice president with Titan Sports, who left a few years back, was hired back as a consultant when it comes to business development. In a sense, he'll replace Lisa Wolf, who was another company VP in charge of business development and human resources. Tentative site for WrestleMania is the United Center in Chicago. Weekend house shows drew $7,309 and $150,097 on July 5th at the Continental Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey, July 6th in New Haven, Connecticut drew $4,462 and $72,034. And July 7th in Providence drew $3,774 and $65,399. Hart, Davey Boy Smith and Marty Jannetty all missed the weekend due to family emergencies. Jannetty's mother suffered a broken hip and he returned home. The Four Corners tag match turned into a triangular match with the New Rockers out, and Bodydonnas wound up whining when Bart Gunn was pinned after Cloudy kissed him. As is usually the case when Bodydonnas are involved, the matches were reported as good. Main event was Michaels Vader, which ended in a DQ when Goldust interfered. Michaels was left laying and Goldust started kissing Michaels until Johnson made the save. This sets up Michaels' Goldust returns in those markets. Savio Vega and Steve Austin continued to have very good arena bouts as well. Jesse Ventura, who is no longer doing his radio drive time show in Minneapolis, is said to be wanting to return here since he has very bitter feelings about his stay with WCW. Ventura and WWF had a bitter and lengthy lawsuit which Ventura won. Don't know if there's place for Ventura in WWF, as he can't touch Jerry Lawler, although he did his worst be as good as Kurt Hennig. In Your House for July 21st in Vancouver had sold 5,826 tickets for about $110,000. The Los Angeles Times had a lengthy article about Olympic weightlifter Mark Henry, who is being sponsored by the WWF and will probably join the WWF after the Olympics. Henry isn't expected to medal. The story talked about Henry's childhood idol being Andre the Giant, and he said that WWF is more honest competition than Olympic lifting because of the WWF's steroid policy. Funny thing is, Henry in the story said he had been tested for steroids about 40 times in the last 18 months, which is a lot more often than a WWF wrestler would be tested. Not to say that there's more steroid use in WWF than in Olympic lifting, because that wouldn't be the case today. No mention in the article of Ken Patera, the last Olympic lifter who made a successful transition. The July 9th Village Voice had an article ripping the Goldust character, saying that Goldust has brought homophobia to new levels in the WWF. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, Dale Torborg, the son of former White Sox and Indians manager Jeff Torborg, wants to wrestle in the WWF. He played 2 years of Class A baseball but was cut by the Yankees and failed to catch on. How soon before someone beats up Jose Lothario to set up a title shot? The Reader's Pages. Lawsuit. Way back in the days when Bill Cosby did stand-up comedy, he made a profound point about parents intervening in their children's conflicts. Parents don't particularly care about who is right, all they want is quiet. This was true with my parents. If someone called or came over to complain about either my brother or I, we were basically screwed. It didn't matter who started, or who was right, whoever complained had inconvenienced my parents, and by doing so, whatever caused those complaints had to stop. Right or wrong be damned, all my parents cared about was quiet. Which leads me to the biggest wrestling story of the year. The WWF filed suit against WCW for trademark infringement. As I write this, a judge in Connecticut denied the WWF's request for a temporary restraining order on WCW's angle involving Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. So, for now, WCW won, right? Wrong. What happened was WWF snitched to Eric Bischoff's parents. Eric's parents have proven in the past they don't care about right or wrong. All they want is quiet. When Vince McMahon wrote a letter about WCW having juice on television, the blades were put away. When Bischoff started taking on-air swipes at the WWF, McMahon responded by taking personal shots at Ted Turner, and Bischoff was told to stop provoking McMahon. Now Vince has the Turner legal staff defending WCW in a Connecticut courtroom. What are Bischoff's bosses going to say? They're going to tell him to knock it off and to kill the angle. Bischoff is going to be not too subtly reminded that the Turner Empire wants a cute little wrestling promotion to play with and take their kids to. It doesn't want legal or political headaches. They're going to tell him to put together his wrestling shows without making any more waves, and then bug him for an autographed 8x10 photo of Hulk Hogan for their kids. Bischoff is usually a hard guy to feel sorry for, but even I have sympathy for him in this situation. On one hand, he's told to go out there and kick some WWF ass, but then his own company effectively takes away his legs. And we all know what happens to one-legged men in an ass-kicking contest. John McAdam. Dracut, Massachusetts. I've gotten sick to my stomach with this promotional war. Vince McMahon has some second-rate nerve filing a suit against WCW, especially after putting on those billionaire Ted skits and his constant ripping off of Paul Heyman's ideas. I'm not supporting WCW or Eric Bischoff for a second. Bischoff started all this, but McMahon should have expected it. Bischoff started by childish name-calling. If you think Bischoff was wrong in putting Nitro on against Raw, you're wrong. That's fair and square good competition. Where he went over the line was giving away the results of Raw. McMahon should have taken action but instead responded with skits. It's always better to avoid a war by using a little common sense. So far, on both sides, all we've seen is ego and emotional stupidity. McMahon has the right to be upset about WCW portraying Kevin Nash and Scott Hall as part of the WWF, however, once it was made clear, not that it has been totally made clear, that Hall and Nash didn't represent the WWF nor will they in the future, McMahon has no ground to stand on. He needs to focus on where the real war is, and improve the booking. He complained about WCW stealing Guy's mannerisms that he's created. As I recall, every one of Mark Merrow's mannerisms originated in WCW. Oh sorry, he's now a wild man instead of a bad man. So Jack Armstrong should sue. All the female valets, foreign objects and lesbian angles are a rip-off of ECW, which makes McMahon a hypocrite. Matt Amma. Winter Park, California. Murdoch. Dick Murdoch was one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. When I started watching Mid-South Wrestling and Georgia Championship Wrestling in the early 80s, I was more entertained by his matches than anyone else's. This was when Junkyard Dog and Mr. Wrestling 2 were the top stars in the Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana area. When Murdoch jumped to Joe Blanchard's Southwest Championship Wrestling, I was even happier because he was wrestling regularly in my neck of the woods in the Rio Grande Valley. He was a very accessible man who would infuriate other wrestlers like Manny Fernandez and Al Perez because he would take an hour after the show to sign autographs for the fans. Calixto Gonzalez. Edinburgh, Texas. Di Paolo. I want to thank you for the excellent coverage of the June 7th show in Buffalo. Ilio Di Paolo was my brother-in-law. Dennis Di Paolo is my nephew. Dennis did one hell of a job getting the word out in the Buffalo area. Everyone I talked to told me the same thing about the show. The wrestling was bad, but the nostalgia was good. The reason it drew so well was a combination of a tribute to Ilio and being the last sporting event at the Old Odd. Ron Martinez. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Tamura. I can't believe you gave the Kiyoshi Tamura story so little space. Tamura has a lock of being the next great superstar in Japan. Ring's signing him ensures them a future. The move may have saved strong-style wrestling in Japan. I couldn't be happier since Rings is my favorite strong-style promotion, and now we can look forward to Akira Maeda passing his top position to either Yoshihisa Yamamoto or Tamura, and a feud between the two that is sure to follow. Tamura's matches with Dick Frey, Drey Kopelev, Ilukine Mikhail and Folk Han will keep me buying tapes for years to come. I don't understand the obsession with Brian Pillman. He's a mid-card worker who has never been a main eventer. Even in his best years he was never used right, and his role with WCW could be called a glorified jobber at times. His strength as a worker has been declining over the past few years, and it can only be magnified by his recent injury. He overacts, and the fact he constantly maintains his character doesn't override the fact that nothing he does is believable. The angle he's worked to the delight of smart fans gives people the impression that he's got a psycho personality due to drug problems, and how is the WWF going to sell that? Average fans know that Pillman walked out in a pay-per-view match against a fat brain-dead Kevin Sullivan, and he'll probably do a job for minor leaguer Shane Douglas in ECW. Good luck to Vince, but I think he's gotten taken in this deal. Jeff Jarrett, who has main event potential and hasn't been buried at all, going to WCW is just as big a deal. These are sad days to be Vader fans. It's so embarrassing. Leon White's mistake was using his own character in WWF. To get a push in WWF you need to be a transvestite or some type of pervert. I wonder if he's a good kisser. A makeover might do him a world of good, like a makeover to All Japan. I see where WCW is going to make the same mistakes as ECW. Psicosis is not a job boy to put Rey Mysterio Jr. or Conan over. He's a world-class wrestler and a superstar in Mexico. If they aren't going to push him, they should bring someone else in to do their dirty work. If they're going to use AAA wrestlers to sell WCW to the Hispanic audience, they should bring in wrestlers like Juventud Guerrera, Venom, Ultimo Dragon, Halloween, La Parca, Super Colo and others, and do six-man tags with Mysterio Jr., Psicosis and Conan, and do it right. Psicosis shouldn't do a lot of jobs for Mysterio Jr. because he's in a bigger weight division. I watched the June 7th Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama vs. Steve Williams and Johnny Ace title match last night. In my eyes it blew away the title change on May 26th that you gave 5 stars to. I see problems with the star system now that so many matches are getting 5 stars. A 6th star can't be far away. Steve Yohei. Montebello, California. Response from Dave Meltzer. Totally agree with your points about Tamura. In the case of Pillman, the whole point of the story was that a wrestler who had never been a headliner was able, through his own manipulations rather than a push from anyone, becoming a star and the object of sides bidding against each other. Thez book. Just finished reading the Luthez autobiography. What a thoroughly entertaining and engrossing book. I highly recommend it to anyone who loves wrestling. If only there were more products like this available for the serious wrestling fan. I want to vent about something that has really been bothering me of late. That is the behavior of ECW fans. I've loved wrestling since I was a little kid and will until I die. I must say that I'm embarrassed that people who call themselves wrestling fans would chant things like "show your 2 stars" and "Bischoff takes it up the 2 stars, doodah." I'm sorry, but people who really like wrestling don't yell crude and crass remarks like the ones you hear at ECW shows. There's a line, and they cross it. It's almost as if they are a group of people with a chip on their shoulder that have to constantly prove to people around them that they aren't marks, and somehow have to prove they are hardcore fans. A real hardcore fan doesn't have to prove it to people around him at shows. The behavior of many of the American fans at the World Wrestling Peace Festival was downright embarrassing. Are these people only happy if matches are blade fests with multiple tables broken? I'm sad to see fans acting idiotic. I know it's a fact of life, but it's still sad to see it proliferate. The behavior of those fans and the way the fans treat women at those shows is deplorable. What's next? A gang rape angle getting cheered? I don't want to hear from ECW fans who say they don't want to be lumped in with the rude ones. I'm sorry. But if a fan next to you is yelling things like "show your 2 stars," you should tell him to shut up. Dan Cirquitella, Reno. This is the end of this conversion. Be sure to comment and subscribe. See you next time.